The writer Teal Swan states that we do not fear the unknown. We simply fear what we do not know about the unknown. That is what I'm here to teach to you about today, the unknown. Or in less broad terms, the game known as Dungeons & Dragons. While many have heard the name Dungeons & Dragons before in their household, whether it be from the news or TV, such as the ever-popular Netflix show Stranger Things, with the four main characters themselves playing the game, or the strange rumor that the game itself is somehow tied in with the occult, many do not know how or why the game is played, really. I myself have had plenty of experience with the game, as I've played it since the young age of 15, every Friday night with my friends around the table. And while the game itself is so well known, many do not know the details of it. And as such, I will be teaching you a brief history of the game, a baseline of its rules, and giving you more of an understanding as to why it is so popular in our modern times for a game so old. It wasn't always the popular name it is today. Actually, it had quite humble beginnings. It all started with two self-proclaimed nerds named Gary Gygax and David Arneson wanting to combine their love of war games and high fantasy like Lord of the Rings. According to Geek and Sundry's Ben Riggs, Mr. Gygax had first created a game named Chainmail, one in which simulated medieval combat but barely scratched the surface of the high fantasy that he wanted to achieve. Mr. Arneson, having read Chainmail, became absolutely enamored with it and adapted some of the game's rules to his own one, in which he named Blackmore. And then, according to the article D&D's Triumphant Return, within weeks, Mr. Arneson and Gygax got together and started drafting together the first copies of what would soon become Dungeons & Dragons itself. Unfortunately, however, no publisher wanted to get a hold of a game that seems so strange and abnormal from the normal Monopoly that they played in their households. And as such, Mr. Gygax had to publish the game itself. But fortunately, they had sold 1,000 copies in their first summer, and it only gained popularity from there, becoming the name that we know today. With a brief history of the game under your belt, let's take a look at some of the baseline rules of the game. The 5th edition Player's Handbook is one I will be referring to for the game, and is one that gives incredible detail as to how the game itself is played. First, the game uses a 7-dice system, one ranging from 4-sided dice to the ever-prominent 20-sided dice, which is the one that is most used within the game. From there, players create a character by rolling their stats, by using a point system as detailed in the book, or rolling 6-sided die to determine the character's strength, intelligence, their charisma, how well they can hold a drink, etc. And afterwards, they get together with their dungeon master, DM for short, and they weave together the character's backstory, why they do what they do, who are they, why they're not just sitting in some bumpkin town and not adventuring, putting their life on the line. Afterwards, they simply wait for the dungeon master to weave together a story for their character alongside others who have joined them. And that involves slinging swords, swinging spells, and maybe convincing the evil king not to be so evil every time. And looking at the history of the game, as well as its rules, you may have a greater understanding of what exactly the game is. But the question persists, what exactly makes it so popular in our modern times? Well, according to Plunge into Fantasy, Dungeons & Dragons lost a lot of popularity in the 90s, with its 2nd edition of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons releasing. But within 2014-2015, it gained a lot of popularity with the 5th editions of rules being released. That is not the only reason, as the writer Jordan Culver states. It is largely attributed to the stream titled Critical Role, a live event every Thursday night which gathers very prominent voice actors in the industry, such as Matthew Mercer, who plays the voice of Jesse McCree in Overwatch, or the most popular one among them all, Liam O'Brien, the one who plays Illidan Stormrage in the ever-popular World of Warcraft. The talents of these actors and their passion for the game have garnered a lot of attention from the time they started in 2015 to the point of now having broken the world record for most funded film project, breaking $11 million on GoFundMe. Eventually, the voice actors wanted their stream viewers to play the game themselves, make their own stories, and that is largely attributed to the fame of the game today. Now, The game Dungeons & Dragons was not well known before this. You didn't have any idea why the game was played. You learned a brief history of its rules, why it is played, how it is played, and why it is so popular in our modern times. About 13.7 million people every week, play the game itself, around the table or over the internet. And maybe with this information you'll do the same. I know every Friday night I'll be playing around the table with my friends, slinging spells, making mistakes, and weaving a story.